7 years into marriage, Jace has remained faithful for 7 years for his first love. On the day of his 30th birthday banquet, for the 6th time, I was mocked as a hen that can't lay eggs. He had an indifferent expression and didn't say a word. I didn't make a fuss either. I just silently booked a plane ticket and flew abroad overnight to pick the father of my child. After hearing that taunt, I still subconsciously looked at Jace beside me. He had a cold expression as if he hadn't heard anything. There were people whispering around, and they cast mocking and scornful glances at me. I should feel aggrieved and lonely about this, because in these 7 years, my husband has never touched me. It was he who put me in the spotlight but watched indifferently like nothing had happened. However, from the 2nd year after marriage until now, the same scene repeats every year, and I have heard the same words 6 times. So I really can't feel any waves in my heart anymore. I mechanically drew a proper and slightly apologetic arc at the corner of my mouth. Aunt is right. Jace is 30 this year, and I am already 28. It's really time. Speaking of this, I suddenly froze. Yes, I am already 28 this year. I really should have a child of my own before the prime childbearing age passes. I released the hand holding Jace's arm and turned to walk out. Elisa? After this, the man said the first sentence since the banquet began. I heard the inquiry in his voice but didn't turn back. In Nanjing at the end of winter, there is still fine snow falling. As soon as I entered, Anwang thoughtfully handed over a towel and hot water. Madam, why didn't you come back by car with Mr.? I took it, dried the ends of my hair, and drank half a small cup of hot water. Not until I felt my body warm up again did I smile reassuringly at her. I have something to do and need to go abroad, so I came back first to pack my luggage. Jace must have an uncomfortable stomach again after drinking too much today. Please cook some hangover soup for him. Looking at Aunt Wang's departing back, I was still a bit dazed. In fact, Jace is also very good to me. The 7 years of marriage are the easiest and happiest time in my life so far. I no longer need to cut pigweed, herd cattle, feed chickens, wash the clothes of the whole family, or cook for the whole family. I don't have to engage in meaningless high society socializing and can devote all my time and energy to improving myself. I can decide the renovation style of Jace's ancestral house and also plant my favorite flowers in the courtyard. Jace will also prepare surprises and gifts for me on every festival celebration. When he is free, he will even cook my favorite food for me himself. Therefore, the servants who have taken care of him since he was a child will also give me the dignity and respect that Mrs. Jace deserves. But whenever I think that he also has a little sincerity towards me, he always does this at his birthday banquet, on occasions when both the Jace family and the Elisa family are all present. Or to be more accurate, in front of his white moonlight, Poppy, the fake daughter of the Elisa family. He shows his attitude without any concealment. There is no me in his eyes, and there is no me in his heart either. I didn't pack too much luggage. I only took all my certificates and bank cards and a few sets of clothes that I am used to wearing. For anything else I need, I can buy it abroad on the spot. When sitting on the plane and looking down from the highest point, watching the familiar night view gradually move away, all the emotions suppressed deep in my heart rebounded. In an instant, I felt my face wet. When I was a child, I didn't have a home. My adoptive parents always reminded me that I was an outsider. Since they took me in, I had to give everything for them and my younger brother. When I grew up, I was found by the people of the Elisa family. As soon as my biological mother saw me, she shed tears. I thought I had a home. But she turned around and hugged the girl beside her who was wearing a little fragrant style and had fair and delicate skin. With a choked voice, she said, "My Poppy. Fortunately, you have been by my side all these years. Mom can't even imagine how distressed Mom would be if it were you who appeared in this state today." 41. What state is it? I tugged at the corner of the torn t-shirt that my younger brother had discarded. I got the answer from the mirror. That person had dry hair and a sallow complexion. She was like an outsider, silently watching the scene of motherly love and daughterly filial piety in front of her. Later, I married Jace. On our wedding night, he told me that marrying me was just fulfilling the marriage contract between our two families. He loved Poppy, but Poppy didn't want to have the reputation of a fake daughter bullying a real daughter. So she asked him to marry me. In the following 7 years, if he had always been indifferent, I wouldn't have any other extravagant hopes. But from time to time, he gave me hope and then disappointed me in the end. Fortunately, at the age of 28, I finally have the confidence and determination to truly welcome my new life. I wiped away my tears and smiled relievedly. After the plane lands, I will have my own child. I no longer need others to give me a home. I can give myself a home by myself. The birthday banquet ended a bit late, and there was already a thick layer of snow on the road. Jace leaned against the car window and pinched the space between his eyebrows. In fact, he has always been tired of such occasions. Under the guise of celebrating his birthday, all he has to deal with are cooperations in the Vanity Fair. On this day every year, what makes him most comfortable is still the bowl of longevity noodles that Elisa personally cooks for him. Thinking of Elisa, Jace paused as he loosened his necktie. He has always known. Elisa is a person who is always worried about gains and losses. She has a gentle temperament and has never quarreled with him. So today's leaving without saying goodbye should not be because she is angry. She may have just gone back early to cook longevity noodles. Jace, I want to reward you for remaining faithful for another year for me. The woman sitting quietly beside him suddenly leaned over. Poppy hooked Jace's neck and whispered. Her soft red lips pressed against his. He was a bit drunk and involuntarily chased after her. The atmosphere in the back seat gradually became ambiguous and hazy. Before the sound of panting came out, the driver had the presence of mind to roll up the window partition. While Jace was indulging, he regained a bit of clarity. He thought, he might not be able to go back and eat the longevity noodles that Elisa cooked for him tonight. The next day, Jace woke up very early. He looked at Poppy who was still sleeping soundly on the bed, his face a bit gloomy. The woman's exposed skin was covered with mottled marks. The messy bed also indicated what had happened last night, but he couldn't remember clearly. He wasn't sure if he had really crossed the line with Poppy. Because of the kindness that the Elisa family had shown to the Jace family in the past, Jace had been told by his parents since he was a child. He had to be good to the daughter of the Elisa family and marry her when he grew up. He regarded this as a creed and took care of Poppy for 15 years. But later he married Elisa. Thinking of this woman, Jace was lost in thought for a moment. He quickly put on his clothes without even tying his tie properly and left the hotel. When the car was speeding on the road, Jace saw someone painting in the square. The painting was a very delicate and vivid iris. At first glance, it seemed as if it had just been picked. There were still a few dewdrops on it. Almost subconsciously, he thought of Elisa again. Stop the car and buy that painting. Jace fell into a long silence looking at that painting. The dewdrops on the iris were like Elisa's tears. Suddenly, a dense pain like being pricked by needles welled up in the man's heart. He seemed unable to deceive himself anymore and say that he hadn't fallen in love with Elisa. But why at this moment? It was the second day after he didn't come home on the night of his birthday banquet. Jace's eyebrows twitched, suddenly realizing that something was wrong again. It was too quiet. His phone hadn't received any messages so far. After hurriedly calling Aunt Wong to ask about the situation, the person on the other end still teased him with a smile. Madam came back last night and asked me to help you cook hangover soup. Nothing happened. Jace's heart was put back in his stomach. He carefully kissed the iris. He decided that no matter what happened last night, he and Poppy were in the past. He had protected her for 15 years. That was enough. After more than 10 hours, the plane finally landed. I was a bit tired. When I arrived at the homestay, I fell asleep as soon as I lay down. There will not only be Elisa in his heart, but also the child of him and Elisa. He is 30 this year and it's time to be a father. After more than 10 hours, the plane finally landed. I was a bit tired. When I arrived at the homestay, I fell asleep as soon as I lay down. When I woke up feeling uncomfortable under my body, it was already the evening of the next day. Due to the hasty decision, I had forgotten my menstrual period. Fortunately, not too much was stained on the bed. After sending a message to the landlord, I scrubbed the soiled sheet and replaced it with a new one. Staring at the drum of the washing machine turning, I was a bit fortunate again. In fact, I had thought about artificial insemination long ago. Naturally, I have also searched for information. I know that the second and third days of menstruation are the appropriate times for testing. So I came at the right time. The airplane meal in my stomach has almost been digested. I cooked some instant food to fill my stomach. Then I started to search for information about genetic consultants and IVF doctors. When everything was negotiated at dawn, I went to the clinic for an interview. On the way there, I received a message from Jace. Elisa, come back early after finishing your business. I have something very important and want to tell you in person. My heart beat violently, uncontrollably. In 7 years of marriage, Jace has never called me so intimately. So I have to admit that a few pathetic extravagances arose in my heart again. Therefore, when the doctor persuaded me that if I had a husband, please think about it more, I was indeed shaken. After apologetically saying goodbye to the doctor, I walked out. Outside the clinic was a beautiful sunny day. The warm sunlight shone on me. When the phone rang, I subconsciously thought it was Jace calling. I answered with a smile without looking at the caller ID. Jace? I have never called him like this before. There was still a bit of warmth on my face the moment I called out. But there was silence on the other end of the phone for a long time. Until I started to feel uneasy. Only then did a sneer come from the receiver. Elisa, are you cheap? I called you just to notify you that I have slept with Jace and you will be divorced soon. The sunlight was so warm. But I seemed to be in an ice cellar. Even my fingers were frozen and I couldn't hang up the phone. The woman maliciously laughed again before continuing. Your parents are mine. Your husband is also mine. You can't compete with me, Elisa. As if afraid that I wouldn't believe her, after Poppy hung up the phone neatly, she sent me several photos of her and Jace sleeping in the same bed. That was the lover I had glanced at thousands of times in my peripheral vision. Every night, I hoped he would appear by my pillow. But he was sleeping so sweetly by another woman's pillow. I stumbled back to the clinic. Before I could speak, tears fell uncontrollably. Doctor, my husband is no good. He hasn't touched me in 7 years. I can only have my own child in this way. In the end, I chose sperm that can give birth to a girl. The provider is a rare Asian in the gene bank. With handsome eyebrows and long eyes, and a tall and slender figure. There is no criminal record in the family for 3 generations. That's enough. The process of artificial insemination was faster than I imagined. After about 15 minutes, the doctor said to me with a smile, Elisa, you can go home after resting for half an hour. Her words deeply touched my heart. I couldn't help but place my hand on my lower abdomen and look forward to the arrival of that little life. On the 15th day, I tested positive for pregnancy with a test strip. I couldn't help crying again. But this time, it was tears of joy. I know that there will be more than just me from now on. I have my own weakness and will also make myself stronger and become armor that can protect her. Then some unresolved matters should be resolved. I clicked on the dialog box with Jace. He sent a message that time and I didn't reply. He hasn't contacted me again these days. Jace, I still need to stay abroad for a while. You can draw up the divorce agreement first and mail it to me for signature. When I return to the country, I will contact you. Then we will go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get the divorce certificate. The property division can be drawn up according to your idea. Only the 30 million you transferred to my personal account when we got married and the savings from my financial management over the years will be kept by me. After the message was successfully sent, I stayed on Jace's personal profile page for a long time. Finally, I chose to block all his contact information. I know that it is still easy for him to find me. But I don't want to be swayed by gains and losses anymore. I don't want to leave any room for myself anymore. Jace has been very busy these days. Busy with work and also busy dealing with Poppy. I don't know if that night gave her an illusion. Recently, she often sends out signals for him to divorce Elisa. Thinking of this, Jace feels a very headache. He admits that he may have loved Poppy. But that was a long time ago. This was realized when he woke up and saw Poppy that day. His first reaction was to frown instead of being happy. Jace, so what do you mean? You slept with me but don't plan to be responsible, right? Do you think my mother, Elisa, is a casual person? Have you thought about how I can be a person in the future? The woman kept crying nonstop in the office. He wanted to make her shut up, but seeing her crying pitifully, he still couldn't bear to scold her. After all, she was the person he had doted on for 15 years. Jace softened his tone and coaxed her softly, Poppy, we were both drunk that night. You know, I have married Elisa and have neglected her for 7 years for you. Thinking of that delicate and elegant face, Jace's voice carried some genuine pity. We owed her in the first place. In fact, she didn't do anything wrong. I will live a good life with her in the future. As for what happened between us, let's leave it in the past. In the past? Poppy's crying paused, as if hearing something absurd, and then she laughed lowly. Jace, listen to what you are saying. Is it still human language? We have had so many years of feelings. Are you so quickly forgetting them all? You obviously doted on me very much. Why has everything changed now? Listening to these questions one after another, Jace became more and more annoyed. He threw away the document he was reading and stood up. He walked to the huge floor-to-ceiling window and looked down. Because I am now Elisa's husband. Poppy, it was you who asked me to marry her in the first place. As soon as these words were spoken, an eerie silence fell in the office. Before Jace could catch his breath, his phone rang again. He frowned and swiped the screen. When he saw that the sender was Elisa, he just loosened his frown. But when he saw the specific content she sent, his face turned pale. He didn't understand why Elisa would suddenly mention divorce. Without time to think, in a panic, Jace dialed Elisa's number, only to find that he had been blocked by her. He is now as confused as a headless fly, but more in his heart is guessing if something happened to Elisa. As soon as he thinks of this possibility, his heart starts to sink continuously. And the woman behind him gave him a heavy blow again, but I regret it now, Poppy said faintly. I'm pregnant, Jace. This is my first time being a mother. I haven't experienced much love from my mother either. So for the little life in my belly, I am extremely nervous and cherish it. Want to give her the best of everything in the world. I consulted a doctor and also looked up a lot of information. It is said that the first 3 months are the time when pregnant women have the most severe morning sickness. But my daughter is so well behaved. She has never made me uncomfortable, so that I start to worry about gains and losses again. Is there really a little life that I am looking forward to beginning to grow in my belly? After another sleepless night tossing and turning, I made an appointment for the earliest gynecology department. Fortunately, the doctor comforted me a few words and didn't say there was any problem. I walked out of the corridor against the light. But I didn't expect to see the 2 people who should have been on the other side of the ocean. In fact, it is a bit colder here than in Nanchang. So I am wearing a thick down jacket and a scarf, making myself look like a clumsy bear. And Poppy is wearing a fur coat on her upper body but only a pair of silk stockings on her lower body. The man next to her saw that her nose was red from the cold and lovingly held her in his arms. The 2 of them were wrapped in a wide windbreaker. They are both tall and have an aristocratic temperament that I don't have. I should have recognized earlier that I am not from the same world as them. Turning sideways, I want to leave through another passage. But accidentally bumped into a doctor passing by and fell to the ground. I couldn't help but let out a low cry. But subconsciously protected my abdomen with my hand. Elisa? Jace recognized my voice. The moment he spoke, he released Poppy. Then he quickly ran towards me. He helped me stand up, and the happy smile on his face hadn't fully emerged yet. When he found that I was always protecting my stomach, his expression cooled down. What are you doing here, Elisa? The man's voice was a bit cold. What are you doing protecting your stomach all the time? I took half a step back and calmly watched Poppy walk over and then affectionately hold his arm. When she noticed my gaze, she also seemed to touch her stomach with her hand as if there was something there. What else is there not to understand? She is also pregnant. I smiled and just felt that everything was completely settled. What are you doing here? That's what I am doing. I didn't think I said anything excessive, but I also saw two flames rising in Jace's eyes with my own eyes. I have never seen him so out of control, which makes me feel a little dangerous. So I took a few steps back again and opened the distance between them. But Jace stopped me. He grabbed me and questioned me as if squeezing the words out of his throat. Whose bastard are you pregnant with? Elisa, are you cuckolding me? I broke free from his restraint and slapped him. No matter how he torments me, I can accept it. But I can't tolerate him speaking maliciously about my child. Jace, please watch your mouth. Don't think of me the same way as you. Just because you are dirty, you think everyone is the same as you. She is only a child that belongs to me alone. You hit me and scolded me? Jace looked incredulous. Good, very good. Don't expect her to get any of my property. He pulled Poppy into his arms fiercely and said with a sneer, Poppy is pregnant with my child. In the future, everything of mine will belong to him. I responded calmly, although illegitimate children can now also enjoy property inheritance rights, but for the sake of his and Miss Poppy's reputation, it is better for you to divorce me as soon as possible. After the pregnancy was stable in a few months, I still returned to the country. After all, I can't stay abroad to have a baby, and I don't plan to settle here. But I don't want to go back to Nanchang. So I went to another city with spring all year round. Considering that I have sufficient funds, I bought 2 houses. One is a single-family villa by the sea. It's not far to drive to the hospital. And it's peaceful and serene, suitable for me to take a walk every night. The other one is in the city center and is a school district house. It also has a small yard. When the child is born, if she likes it, I plan to raise a kitten or a dog to keep her company. After confirming the residence, I started looking for a caregiver. Because I have no relatives and no friends. In case of an emergency, I need someone to deal with it with me. When looking through the list book given by the agency, I was stunned. I actually saw a familiar face. The intermediary took a look and explained to me as if it was a common occurrence. Indeed, there are very few men who work as caregivers. But Jackson's situation is relatively special. Plus, sometimes physical work is really needed, so he was still hired. But don't worry, he has a very mild personality and is also very handsome. Customers who have been served by him are all full of praise for him. In a trance, I said to the intermediary, then choose him. But I need to sign a long-term contract for 8 months, so there needs to be a 1-month probationary period to see if he is suitable. I kind of want to know what kind of person the man who provided the genes for my child is. The agency is very efficient. I just communicated with him in the morning, and in the afternoon, I saw Jackson himself. He looks even more handsome than in the photo. He has very thin eyelids, a straight nose bridge, and very gentle eyebrows. It is already early spring, so he is only wearing a thin long windbreaker. If he didn't have several large bags in his hand, he would look more like a model going to take a photo shoot. I subconsciously reached out to take it. Let me help you carry some? No need. It's not heavy. The man's voice is soft and gentle, like the warm wind in spring. He very gentlemanly turned sideways and squinted at me with a smile. This is originally my duty. How can I need the employer to help? For some reason, I suddenly felt my face get hot. My heart beat unconsciously a few beats faster. I watched Jackson put the bought things into the locker and refrigerator in different categories. I couldn't help but sigh at his thoughtfulness again. He didn't stop his movements and carefully explained to me, these are medicines that pregnant women may need and some edible snacks. You can eat some. As for the 3 meals a day, when he said this, he deliberately cleared his throat and pretended to be proud. You can tell me whatever you want to eat. I guarantee that I can make it into something that pregnant women can eat. Under such expectations, I ate the dinner made by Jackson. I have to say, his craftsmanship is really good. Ordinary home-cooked stir-fries can also have a very delicious taste. In the past in the Jace family, it was mostly to accommodate Jace's eating habits. He prefers Western food, but I actually like Chinese stir-fries full of wok chi. Of course, it's not impossible to ask the chef to make an extra portion for me. But after I tried it once and saw Jace's slightly impatient eyes, I didn't mention it again. After eating, I went for a walk by the sea as usual. It's just that in the past, it was only me, but today there is also Jackson's company. The sea breeze is very gentle, and the afterglow is also very romantic, gilding the sea with a layer of gold. In such a quiet environment, people's moods will also become calm. So neither of us spoke. After walking for about half an hour, Jackson spoke softly, "Let's go back, Elisa. It's going to get colder soon. Be careful not to catch a cold." When I was about to leave the beach, I couldn't help but look back. There were 2 rows of footprints on it. As if indicating that I am no longer alone. Life passes peacefully like this. Even though Jackson doesn't know that half of the genes of the child in my belly are his, I still sigh countless times in my heart. I did choose a good father for my child. He may not have as high a social status as Jace in the secular sense and is not as rich as him. But simply as a man, I think he is much better than Jace. Jackson is gentle but not weak, kind but not foolish, sincere but not routine. Getting along with him makes me feel extremely relaxed and happy. If only Jace would never appear again. But unfortunately, things don't always go as one wishes. Or perhaps it is to remind me that I haven't divorced him yet. I saw Jace again. He is still like in the past, wearing a tailored suit and a proper necktie. Still looking like a noble rich young master. Only the unshaven stubble on his chin and the bloodshot eyes all over his pupils exposed him. He was far from being as dashing and romantic as he seemed at first glance. At that time, I was leaning on a lounge chair and watching Jackson loosen the soil and fertilize the unknown sapling he planted. And Jace was also silent. Just stood outside the small garden and watched for a long time. He called me calmly, "Elisa." Only then did it attract the attention of me and Jackson. Even though Jackson didn't know his identity, he still protected me behind him at the first time. Unexpectedly, this move directly angered Jace. He raised his leg and kicked open the fence door violently. His jaw was tight. "What the hell are you? Are you guarding against me like guarding against a thief?" I never thought I would hear vulgar language from Jace. "Do you know that the person you are protecting behind you is my wife?" "Really?" Jackson frowned in confusion and smiled faintly. "But I have never heard Elisa mention you." Jace couldn't bear it anymore. He stepped forward and punched Jackson in the face. "Son of a bitch. Are you worthy of calling Elisa by her name?" The 2 of them suddenly started fighting in front of me. Every punch was solid and merciless. For some reason, I just felt endless exhaustion in my heart looking at this. "Enough." My voice was very soft, but both men stopped. Seeing that they were both injured, I finally stepped forward. I pulled Jackson back a few steps. I stood in front of him and looked directly at Jace. "What are you doing with this scene? I have mentioned divorce to you twice. Why are you still acting like this?" Jace looked incredulous as soon as he saw me pull away Jackson. Until he heard what I said, his eyes turned completely red, but he still glared at me while clenching his teeth. "Elisa, since you said so, you should also understand. You just mentioned divorce to me, but we haven't actually divorced yet. You are still my wife and Mrs. Jace. How dare you be so close to another man? How dare you protect another man in front of me?" I opened my mouth but didn't speak yet. A mocking female voice sounded, "What do you mean by another man?" The man behind her protection is the father of the bastard in her belly. If we have to say it, you are the other man. Like a thunderbolt falling. I froze on the spot, and Jace also seemed to be stunned as if he didn't understand. Only Jackson behind me was like a person who had nothing happened. He came forward and gently put his arm around my shoulder. I felt my body trembling uncontrollably slightly. He held me tighter and his voice was very pitying. "Don't be afraid, Elisa. In fact, I already knew. This statement made me a little surprised and also made Jace misunderstand something successfully. He wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth that was punched out and laughed bitterly in self-mockery. So Elisa, you have cuckolded me long ago, right? I didn't look at him and turned around and walked towards the house. If you think so, I can't help it. I have printed and signed the divorce agreement. Just in time today, I am free. Wait a moment. I will take it out now and let you sign it. As soon as she finished speaking and hadn't spoken again, Poppy suddenly laughed sadly. Ha ha ha. Jace, this is your retribution. You made me abort your child with my own hands. Now you have nothing left. And you, Elisa? Why on earth did you appear? Obviously I am the daughter of the Elisa family. I have learned etiquette for 21 years. As soon as you appeared, everything changed. I will kill you. Then I will still be the only eldest lady of the Elisa family. A huge impact hit me. I was knocked down to the ground. There was some wetness under me. The intense pain almost made me faint. Jackson, it seems that my amniotic fluid has broken. And Jace stood in front of me with a sharp knife stuck in his belly, and blood was constantly flowing out. Elisa's situation is not good. After she was pushed into the operating room, she didn't come out for a long time. Finally, when I saw a doctor, it was a doctor with a serious face holding a critical notice. The situation of the parturiente is very dangerous. Which one is her family member and the father of the child? Please sign the notice. Jackson wanted to step forward, but Jace pushed him away. His belly was only simply bandaged and his face was still very pale. But still firmly said, I am her husband. The child she is pregnant with is mine. Trembling, Jace signed the most scribbled signature in his life. Doctor, in any case, please ensure the safety of my wife's life and put her first. Hearing this, the doctor patted him on the shoulder reassuringly. As soon as the person left, Jace slid to the ground powerlessly along the wall. Who are you pretending to be affectionate for now? If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened. Jace, this is all your own doing. Let Elisa go. She doesn't owe you anything. After Jackson said calmly, he turned his head and looked at the operating room again. Put his hands together and pray. In the middle of the night, the light in the operating room finally went out. The doctor pushed Elisa out. After a long time, he said tiredly but comfortingly, Congratulations. Mother and daughter are safe. A nurse on the side held the baby and showed it to Jace. He held it carefully and looked at that wrinkled face. Then he looked at Elisa's weak face on the hospital bed. Her whole face was pale and her hair was wet with sweat and stuck to her forehead. But when she found that she was holding the baby, she was a little worried and nervous. Jace suddenly burst into tears. Why did it become like this? Obviously Elisa is his wife. Obviously the one he is holding should be their child. On the day he decided to start over with Elisa. But she completely gave up on him and sentenced him to death. Don't worry, Elisa. Our daughter is very cute, a little ball. You are a very brave mother who let her be born safely in this world. He showed the child to Elisa and listened to himself summon up the courage to say, When you finish your confinement, I will give you a gift. Jace never thought he would end up in such a ridiculous situation. In his 30 years of life, for the first time, he felt that he was such a joke. Elisa always said that he loved Poppy. But it was not until he really got Poppy that he confirmed with incomparable clarity. The guardianship for the past 15 years is only because of responsibility. Perhaps there is some love, but compared to his love for Elisa, it is really too insignificant. He has never told Elisa. At the first sight of her, he already felt sorry for her. And men are often most likely to fall in love because of pity. She was wandering outside for 21 years and her whole person was as fragmented as duckweed. When he saw her shed tears, an unprecedented desire to protect burst out in him. He wanted to hold her tightly in his arms and shield her from the wind and rain. Give her a peaceful and long-term haven. But at the beginning, he couldn't bear to disappoint Poppy. So Jace said those words to Elisa on their wedding night. That night, she cried silently for a long time, carefully restraining even her sobs. And in fact, after she fell asleep, he secretly kissed her again before leaving. How ridiculous. Obviously kissing his own wife, but only secretly. From then on, where Poppy couldn't see, he would be doubly kind to Elisa. In contrast, every year, Elisa only needed to be wronged on his birthday. But in his 30th year, everything got out of control. Later he remembered everything. At the moment Poppy kissed him, he was actually stunned for a moment. He knew that he shouldn't do this. But in an instant he remembered again. It was because of her that he hadn't touched the person he really loved for so many years. So he was going to vent all his anger on Poppy. Then, he would forgive her. And let himself start a new life with Elisa. Jace had everything planned well. But unexpectedly, both Elisa and Poppy did things that he didn't expect. He didn't expect Elisa to mention divorce to him. How could he allow it? Obviously he had just clearly recognized and admitted his feelings for her. He also didn't expect Poppy to be pregnant and threaten him with the child. Jace wanted to cover up all this too much. So when Poppy begged him to accompany her abroad to relax, he agreed again. He thought, could he coax Poppy to abort that bastard? He didn't want to admit that it was his child. Only the child born to the woman he loves is his child. Also at that time, God let him discover that Elisa was also pregnant. In extreme anger, he even forgot what he had done wrong to Elisa. He deliberately said angry words in front of her. But Elisa's expression was calm without a single ripple. Even if he was reluctant to accept it, he had to admit. She really didn't love him anymore. So anything he said couldn't shake her at all. Jace still made Poppy abort the child. A child who is not expected by parents should not come into this world. Then, he was like a stray dog on the roadside. Miserably and greedily peeping at Elisa's life silently. Watching her belly getting bigger day by day. Watching the male caregiver getting closer and closer to her. Watching more smiles bloom on her face than in the past 7 years. And then watching Elisa being pushed into the operating room. The doctor said that her situation was very bad. His head buzzed and he thought of too many things. Fortunately, mother and daughter were safe in the end. Finally, Elisa smiled lovingly and affectionately at that little one. Jace actually cried. He had never seen that satisfied and happy smile on Elisa's face. He finally decided to give her freedom. She has been wandering all her life. He only wishes that the rest of her life will be smooth. Jace's last gift to Elisa is the divorce certificate. After leaving the Civil Affairs Bureau, he stood in place and watched Elisa walk forward, without looking back even once. Just like on his 30th birthday banquet, she left so resolutely. He thought in a trance. If that day, he had held her back, would the ending between him and Elisa be different? His head was about to split from the pain. Jace couldn't bear it and squatted down, hanging his head. Let the surging tears wet the ground. He remembered the day he got married to Elisa again. The priest asked them to take their vows to each other. There were many people witnessing that wedding. But he only remembered Elisa's flushed face. She was shy but responded with hope, "I do."